everyone. Hopefully, this is working well. Please let me know if it's not. I'm going to try to see if I can get Joe. Hopefully, he comes soon. Just gonna send him a reminder email. Hopefully, we're live as well. Let me know if we're not. Link, just in case he cannot find it. Maybe he actually sent me a text message. Can you pass me my light phone, please? My dear wife, helping me. It's right there. I don't know if he sent me a text message that he couldn't do it. Actually, I haven't checked this morning. Been busy with preparations. No text message, so he probably show up in just a little bit. Um, I do have the questions from you guys, so we're gonna start with that. All of those of you that submitted it from Reddit and also from um, Discord, and also on the forum. Which, by the way, we have a new forum. I'm gonna put it in the comments or in the live chat. You can sign up with the new forum with the following link that I will send you in just a second. But it's more like chat based, and it's very useful. It's going to have documents, things of that nature. So if you haven't heard about it, I'll make sure to put it in the links. So make sure to have it right there. Of course, if you have any specific questions, make sure to put them also in the chat. There's the invitation code. You can come in, hang out with us. There's a chat. There's threads. There is, you can ask questions and also contribute if you have any knowledge about the Light Phone 2 or any of the other dumb phones that we have in here. I'm going to see, probably send Joe a text. And yeah, he should be here anytime soon. So I believe we're on time. I think we said 2 p.m. Eastern time. So I think that's 12 p.m. my time, but maybe I'm early and we're going to be here. Oh, there's Joe right there. Um, cool. Awesome. Well, thank you guys for coming to our live stream today. And I'll put Joe on the side here. I think my camera is not focusing on me. But yeah, if you guys have any questions or anything, make sure to put it in the chat. We're going to start with the questions submitted on the Reddit, then go to the Discord, and then go to the chat. So be a little bit patient if your question shows up. Joe, how's it going?
Hey, what's up? How are you?
Hey, always good to see you. Um, all right, so why don't we get this live stream started? And we do have questions and stuff like that. But tell us, you guys have been working on something. What is it that you're working on, and how is it shaping up? And if you have any demos, this will be the time.
Yeah, we've been working on a pretty big Light OS update for a couple of months now. We've been very close to releasing it for a couple of weeks. We just keep running into a couple of little bugs that we'd really like to tighten up before putting it out. Some of them are pre-existing, but uh, they've been a little more difficult than we'd like to get to the
Mm.
bottom of some of these, but I can definitely dive into the change log. There's a ton of little things that we were able to fix. Some of them will probably be completely not invisible to most users, which is great as well. But we really wanted to work on a general stability improvement across the board, and then sort of like in three big categories. We did a lot of work to the keyboard itself, to the podcast and music players, but podcast tool itself, in terms of the UX and some function much more. And then for the music tool, a lot of reliability things around the audio player itself. A couple of minor updates to the calendar tool, and of course, just some general OS things. And we've actually have a slew of more things that won't make this update that are basically ready to go, but we've kind of stopped merging code so that we could really wrap this up and get an update out. And we'll probably actually have a follow up coming pretty soon. So it's definitely a pretty big and exciting update in terms of little things that I think will really improve the experience for everyone.
And I know because when I send you a text to schedule this live stream, I know you sent me back an emoji, so that is now fully working as far as I know
Oh yeah.
on the live.
So the emojis have been working for actually probably about a good month now. Building the keyboard itself was really fun, but it required us doing a lot of, I guess, refactoring is probably the right word across the OS to make sure that emojis were really well handled. If they were in a contact name, if you were searching, um, if while composing, if there's a draft and you come back to your message, making sure that it rendered properly across the OS. So because there was so many changes, we were really careful to thoroughly test searching, the notes tool, and anywhere where there's keyboard and bodies of text.
Right. And I know over time, before we get into the questions, over time, a lot of people have said, hey, there's a lot of quality of life improvements, like the directions, like the podcast. Have you guys gotten all of those performance things kind of ironed out now, where you feel like it's, what percentage of reliability would you put it? If we were at like a 50%, you know, where are we now?
Uh, Hard to quantify. I would say the podcast and music tool, you're going to notice the biggest difference, specifically around things like um, there was a bug with the music tool with some Bluetooth headphones where it would get stuck in this kind of like play pause state. We saw some instances of songs that had been corrupted. So just like better handling so that if there is an error, it's, at least notifying the user like, hey, this song was corrupted. Please try to re-upload it. Um, and things like that, where before it would just seem like a very confusing state. And I think probably one of the most notable fixes was we figured out finally the root cause of a podcast jumping kind of mid episode.
Yes.
It was a pretty complicated buffering issue. I know that a lot of users knew that if you download the podcast, that tended to alleviate it, but we really wanted to get to the bottom of that one. So that's a huge reliability plus. We've been doing a lot of work. It's outside of this actual OS update. It's more of a firmware update on the GPS improvements, particularly around the initial lock, um, and that work is proving to be pretty good so far. But it hasn't been as thoroughly tested as we'd feel comfortable pushing that. And because it's a firmware update, it has a different kind of testing cycle. We
Right.
push it back with our ODM partner. They do their own test as well because we want to, obviously really make sure nothing goes wrong with the firmware update.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, as always, Joe, I want to say thank you for coming to the live stream and just interacting with the community. I think you add a lot of value in showcasing things and things that are coming. Of course, expected timeline. Are you saying like in the next 2 weeks? Is that where you're going to push it, or what's
I
the?
mean, realistically, we were planning on launching it last week, so it's kind of an ASAP. There's really three kind of outstanding bugs. One of them is this around draft messages. That's kind of been the most frustrating
Yeah, yeah,
to
yeah.
date, and uh, maybe I can dive into some of the updates that will make a little bit more sense. So on the keyboard, obviously we talked about the emoji addition, but we've
Hmm.
also maybe it'll make more sense if I try to
Yeah, you
demo
can
it.
showcase it. Go ahead.
So basically, we've also uh, switched, and there's a way to revert this if a user
Oh,
doesn't want.
nice. I see. The
But
send button is all
sorry,
the way
the
to the
mirror
top.
is always going to throw my presenting skills away. But we moved the send button to the top. It definitely took me longer than I thought to get used to, and so there is a switch to go back to what we're calling legacy keyboard. But now the X on the bottom wouldn't actually clear your text. So let's say you're writing a text to someone and you hear them send you a reply. You can
Hmm.
press the X, check what they're saying, and jump right back in, and that draft will save. And so, like, if you had a text and you wanted to clear the draft, now we've added. Sorry, this is really hard to do. Mirrored. Um, in addition to paste, we've added copy and clear. So now you can
Clear.
copy a draft of a text, and clear will just, as it kind of states, clear the draft. So
Awesome.
instead of just using the menu button to leave a draft, just, if you accidentally hit that X while you're typing and meaning to backspace, it won't clear your whole message. You'll still have that draft saved.
That is
But
awesome.
we saw a weird state where occasionally that draft will get stuck. So even if you send a text, the next time you open the keyboard, that original draft is there.
Mm,
Um, and it's tricky because it's definitely not 100% of the time. Uh, and we have a new beta coming out today that we hope we'll get to the bottom of it. But that one's been kind of lingering. There was two other issues that have actually already been fixed. One was a kind of weird state. It's been a bug for a while, but if you're backspacing from the middle of a long text and
okay.
holding it to delete multiple words, it would take letters off the end of the text as well. And if you started moving around the cursor a lot, there was a state where the cursor got out of sync with where it actually was in the text. So that was a really confusing state. We were able to fix that. I mean, these are kind of rare ones. Another one around, we worked a lot on, especially relating to emojis, but how like the threads themselves truncate
Hmm.
on different pages and present themselves. And so we had one little minor issue with that we wanted to fix. And then like I said, it's a really big update. So I hope I'm not going too into the weeds of
Yeah,
it.
no, I get
Um,
it. I get it. And
um,
you just touched on the
we
keyboard,
made a
like so
change.
many quality of life improvements on the keyboard alone. So, yeah,
Yeah.
continue. Go ahead.
Keyboard, and that really does a lot as well, or includes a lot of work to the actual threads themselves. One other kind of minor change we made is if you miss a call, right now the phone returns to the lock screen, which has led to a lot of pocket dials over the years, we think. So now we've added a change where, like, let's say you miss a call in your pocket or in your bag or something, the phone will go back to sleep if it was previously asleep. And we suspect that that change is having a minor effect on our battery pool. So we've been doing a lot of battery testing this week to make sure that we don't, because obviously that's a big priority for us to make sure we don't ever want the battery life to drop in any significant way.
Right.
So those are kind of the gating things. We're hoping early next week to have a beta that addresses all of those and that we feel comfortable releasing. So we don't have an exact date. I would say 2 weeks seems very possible, but we're so close. I think
Yeah.
everyone really wanted to release it last week. So it's a little disappointing, but also at the same time, we'd much rather get it right. And the good news is that in all of this testing, like we've been able to add a ton of features that
Mm,
aren't addressed just yet in this update. One of those is like custom time zone functionality.
mm,
We didn't want to rush that into this, but that's basically built out so people can custom the time zone, which is important for people that live on like maybe like a border state or a country like Puerto Rico that uses a different time zone than where the SIM card might naturally auto
gotcha.
time zone.
Gotcha. 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 Cool, cool. That's awesome to hear. I mean, like, I can't wait for the quality of life improvements, especially since I'll be in Europe for the next 2 weeks and I'll be testing a lot of things over there. Um, you know, unofficial testing for the carriers and things of that nature. As you guys try to figure it out. Which I guess, do you have anything else to share or showcase? Do you think like we could get an idea of anything else that you would think can be showcased on the screen that is, I don't know, helpful in that sense? Like, is there anything like
I
that
don't
is
have the
visually
podcast tool on my actual phone
okay?
right now. I haven't been really using it a lot, but I could talk about some of the podcast upgrades. That's probably
Sure,
worth mentioning. I have
that's
a
go
list
ahead.
here on the side, but we've redesigned the homepage. So instead of being of when you first open the podcast tool, a list of all the recent episodes, it actually just shows the shows themselves on the list, which in talking to a lot of users, that felt like a much more practical uh, homepage design. Um, so that's been redesigned a little bit. There's a Bluetooth icon added to that page now. When you go into the podcast episode list view, there's a way to change the order. So if you wanted to start chronologically reverse, there's a button to swap that for that specific show, and you're also able to now search within a specific show for an episode you might want to find. A really important one is now shows are able to show 2 lines of text for longer podcasts. It still does cut off for some like really long podcast titles, but I think in most of our testing, that added line of context gives enough that the user understands what the show is that they're trying to watch. So that's both in the episode list view, but also when you're on the player view, and that required a lot of spacing rework. There's also a way now to change the playback speed. I believe it's 5 options. You could slow it down a little bit, 1.25, 1.5, I think 175, and 2x. Um,
Nice.
in terms of the playback speed, like I said, we fixed some of these bugs about streaming. So
Right.
the player interface is actually shared between the music and the podcast tool. So we fixed a lot of bugs around there. Some were obvious and some were probably not as obvious. And like I said, we added some notifications around some of that as well. So if it does crash for whatever reason, before the phone might just be in this kind of stuck state until you rebooted it. Now, it kind of automatically clears that tool so that and lets you know, hey, there was an error. The tool crashed. Please reopen. Which obviously it sucks that the tool crashes, but at least that's a much better experience
Yeah.
as we continue to fix all of these little things. Uh, there were some issues with some of the skip buttons on the homepage. A lot of these were pretty rare issues and some screen miss moments. So we fixed a lot of those. You should now be able to, at least on all the Bluetooth devices we've been testing, change the volume from a Bluetooth device.
Mm.
And that
Oh wow.
syncs better with the device itself. So a little bit of Bluetooth improvement there. Um, that's probably most notable for the podcast itself. I'm reading it through, and there's definitely a lot of little bugs, but we don't need to talk about all of those.
Yeah. No, I got you. I got you. I definitely understand.
For the calendar tool,
Okay, let's go calendar.
a
Okay.
couple of other little bugs sometimes with like notifications, if making sure the notification settings stayed if you changed some of the other settings on the OS, that they were just in general notifications. We did some work, tried to fix a bug where some people saw that they'd have their phone set to nothing, but it would still ring occasionally, which is obviously a not good experience. So we found a couple bugs in how notifications were being set and stored, the
Mhm.
actual settings for notifications. We added a toggle. So for either phone calls or text messages, if you have it on a tone, you can decide if you want it to vibrate or not in addition with a toggle in the notifications page. So that would mean like if I had a ping, do I want the phone to vibrate in addition to the ping, or just be, the ping without a haptic? Um, so it's a kind of minor thing, but some users have been asking about it, and we want to do that. When you added a new event on the calendar tool, it defaults now to the current day, which is just a nice thing for me. Or if you're making like a reminder for later in the day, it's nice that you don't have to go and pick the day. Obviously, if it's the day in the future, you'll still have to make that change. One of my favorite changes is if you're scrolling through the recents list of your recent history. I could probably show this. Uh, as you start to go back, it will now show a loading instead of just kind of being stuck before. So that's just a really nice moment. I think, light phone users have probably acclimated to that experience by
To the
now,
back
but
and forth.
especially for new users, it's a little bit
Yeah.
jarring. They're like, why is it just stuck? And then you see the rest of them populate. So
Yes.
we did some improvements. That's a really nice one. Um, like I said, after you miss a call, it won't open the phone. We added some little messaging. So when you reboot the Light OS, log out or factory reset, there's an actual screen that shows that that was triggered. Previously, if you just press the button, the screen did nothing, and then the phone reset. But you
Hmm.
didn't know. It kind of gives you that feedback. Um, we did some improvements to, like, if you send a text to someone on page 6 of your recents and you leave that thread, you're still on page 6, even though that contact is moved to the top. So now you'll follow them back up to the top, which felt like a more, um, you know, what you'd anticipate. A lot of fixes to like group text overflow. If you're on a group text, especially with some
Hmm.
MMS or emojis, sometimes the text would go over the given space and kind of encroach into the buttons at the bottom. So that should all be fixed now. Um, Fix some rendering on the recents page as well as the call connecting screen. That's just some e-ink issues we saw occasionally. Uh, yeah, and I guess a lot of little other bugs, but that's kind of touching upon most of the big new changes, I'd say.
It sounds massive. I mean, to me, it's just like, you know, the thing that I keep coming back as we are now in year 4, right? Like it's almost 4 years since I've been using the light phone, and the thing I love about it is that it just continues getting better, right? So like recently, you know how the light phone, the battery life is really tied to the tower, right? You know, so the signal that we have at home was always poor, but now AT&T just upgraded their towers in my area, and I'm getting 3 days of battery life at home because, again, you know, um, the battery and the signal are working very well right now. But that was kind of like a minor thing for me, as you know, has always been. But it's just really nice that now you're bringing a lot of other quality of life improvements. Like the podcast thing is going to be really helpful for me. I mean, I know plenty of people that have been always saying like, can we get 2 times or 1.5, you know, or like whatever. Like I know that stuff has always been on the deck, but I always love that you guys are listening to the feedback, working on the product and making it better. Because and instead of, you know, just releasing a new product, which I know we'll touch on that question in just a little bit, as it always comes up, you know, every single time. But yeah, but I'm really glad, you know, now the calendar function is there, is really helpful for a lot of people that keep a calendar, that want to get reminders, things of that nature in there. So that is really awesome. Cool. Well, I really hope that we get to see it. Hopefully this next week or the week after. I probably have a delayed release on my usual schedule, since my usual schedule is release a video probably the day after. But due to me being in Europe, probably I won't be able to do that. Probably maybe a shorts or something like that, since that will be easier to publish. But again, thank
We
you
are
for. Go
planning
ahead.
on sending newsletter when the update goes live, which we
Perfect.
don't always do for every update. But I think because there's so many changes to things like the send button, that we want to
Hmm.
make sure it's clear that if someone's really, thrown off, they can easily revert that in the settings.
Gotcha.
So
That's good.
uh,
That's good to know.
we will have a newsletter that goes out to all the light email accounts as well.
Yes. Awesome. Good to know. Okay. So let's get started with a couple of things. Let's start with from like the highest level, and then let's go into like more, I think, interesting questions um, that I found. And some of these you already addressed, so I'm not going to ask those. Like, you know, for example, like the emoji one, somebody asked that. We're going to clear that out. So if your question wasn't answered or asked, is because it was not it was already addressed, or, you know, kind of like we can move on from that. So first thing is something that I think we've been touching on since the release of the light phone, and since we started doing the first live stream, which was the SDK, right? Like, you know, developing user custom tools. One of our users, shoulderless snake on Reddit, said, are any news on the light phone SDK for public use? What are the challenges if there are no plans for it?
Yeah, I would say it's actually kind of been put on the back burner. I think one of our biggest learnings was that everyone had quite different expectations for what an SDK might mean. And I think there was some misunderstanding between like what we thought we might want to build and what users we were talking with would actually find useful. So there hasn't been any tangible progress, and I would say it's not, like immediate near term goals to do it. We're still definitely open to the idea of some sort of SDK, but at this time, uh, we just feel like it might be more useful for us to continue just diving into the OS ourselves and trying to use all of our resources uh, to really clean up these features that we have, as we kind of feel like we're in a place where we have a lot of the core features that users want. But it's definitely not something we've given up on. I think it just through some of our last surveys, we learned that people were looking for more of an open source of the entire OS than actually just the ability to build these kind of custom tools that you could
Hmm.
add or remove separate, which is what our kind of initial thinking was. Um,
Okay, sounds
so
good.
I would say it's kind of on the back burner for now. Obviously, if we start to see huge interest or huge value that might come from it, we're definitely open to reconsidering that
Yeah.
priority.
As we work our way down, we're gonna do more of like the philosophical, I guess, lifestyle questions first, and then we're gonna get into like nitty gritty, kind of like carriers and stuff like that, updates and things of that nature. So one question that somebody says here, Justin Rubin says, "What would you suggest for someone who has left the light phone and feels overwhelmed at the idea of jumping back in? It often feels like friends and family will judge the lack of connection. It's obviously tough in today's world. Would you say it has gotten better?"
I'd say it's pretty subjective, and like for me, it seems like a no-brainer. Like I can't imagine going back to a smartphone, and I've been able to adjust my lifestyle to fit uh, having a minimal phone, whether it was the light phone or if the light phone were to vanish tomorrow, I'd probably be looking at one of our competitors' phones. I'd probably be going to your videos and seeing which other phone might make sense. Uh, you know, it's definitely not easy. Like I don't want to sugarcoat that either. And there's probably more friction with the world at large now, even though the light phone has come a long way, and these improvements will make personally using the phone easier. The world's dependency on QR codes has gone up. And there's probably a million excuses to why someone might want a smartphone, but I think it's really about personal priorities. I've never cared too much what my friends or family thought about my habits. I always thought pretty selfishly about what was best for me and my mental health and
Mhm.
productivity day to day. So that was never too much of a concern, and it's never really been a factor. Obviously, working on the light phone, it's kind of a given that we would all respect each other to be light outside of normal working hours.
Cool. Larger frame. And again, this has come again and again. And I mean, you shared that there was some progress back a couple of months ago, but Spaceless from Discord says, any news on texting from the desktop or external keyboard compatibility?
I would say texting from the dashboard is definitely something we've done a couple of little tests with since, and we were hoping to push that further uh, pending the release of
Mhm.
this next OS update. So it's still probably months away, at least at this point. But that one's definitely really interesting to us. The
Gotcha.
dashboard in general, how we can add more function to the dashboard. Texting I think would be one really big one. As we look at this GPS improvement, Find My Phone might be a really nice one. Parents or users themselves have mentioned interest in that, and maybe even the ability to, in a more parental control way, or actually some users have asked for this, to set harder limitations on some settings. So, like you could disable hotspot completely from the dashboard, or
Right.
text messaging completely from the dashboard, so that it's not just a setting that you can change on the phone itself. Um, so we've been definitely interested in that. I would say the external keyboard, we haven't felt like there's been much of an interest in the wider light phone user base. We did include a question about it on our survey, and it seemed to be pretty low on
Hmm.
the priority. We do have like a version of something like that we use internally for our developers so that they can actually
Right.
type. But we haven't really thought about what like a user facing interface
Okay.
might look like for that.
Fair enough.
I think our
Fair enough.
fear is that like the phone is so small that it's not really intended to be doing long form texting, and that there's probably more suitable devices in that regard. But it's definitely something we could consider if we see that priority spike again.
Yeah. Still at a high level, what is the next big thing for light phone that isn't a new tool? So outside of like,
Um,
for light, I
well,
guess as
there's
a company.
a variety of things going on. We are launching a new web store on our website, which is probably less relevant to existing users, but there's a variety of. Sorry, my cat's jumping up on me. She's the cutest. All right, she wants to hang. You can hang. Um, uh, Sorry about that. So we're switching to a Shopify, which will make things a lot more reliable for us right now.
Okay.
As a business, it will allow us to have more products. So we're going to start carrying some third-party accessories. These headphones are one of them by the brand
Oh,
AI
nice.
AI AI. They're wired headphones that work pretty great, and it's a pretty ethically aligned company. This brand Lemur, maybe some of you have seen, has made a custom phone cover out of recycled leather. So we'll be carrying that on the site. And then we have like a lot of other ideas for products that will carry in, either like complement the device as an accessory or like the experience of going light. So we might start selling like playing cards for a few bucks.
Nice.
To like we have a pack of postcards that we put together. Oh, wrong way. Um, that one's sealed. Here's like so like all these light photos, and then on the back is postcards. So like things that you go light and you can write all your friends some letters and really kind of
That
complement
is
it. So
that is great.
that's exciting. It will allow us to accept other payment options much easier, like Apple Pay or PayPal, perhaps, as well as hopefully more shipping options for the end user. If they want to expedite the shipping and whatnot. So like that's a little bit back endy, but it's going to definitely help us in the long term. We're also transitioning our MVNO partner
Hmm.
for our service plan, like the kind of middleman between us and AT&T. Will be transitioning, and that's going to be a much more reliable platform. It will give us some more metrics. It's going to make activating SIMs a little bit more straightforward, especially from coming from some carriers. Um, more data, like how much data you've used. You'll be able to check that throughout the month. We'll actually be rolling out a middle ground plan as well for 5 GB of data. Um,
Nice.
I don't want to misspeak on the price. I think it's $45 a month. There's like the 30 that, and it could be 40 though. I got to double check. So that transition's happening, and we'll be emailing all of our service users when that happens. It's going to be basically a seamless transition. You won't need a new SIM card or anything, but we'll just explain kind of some of these new benefits that you'll be able to see on the dashboard. So that's just kind of like long-term stability for the back end of us. But then outside of that, on the Light OS side, one thing we've already started working on is contact sending, receiving, and saving.
Hmm.
And I think that's going to be a really big one that was voted
Oh, I
super
see.
high on the survey. So if someone sends you a VF card of a contact from an iPhone or an Android phone, you'll be able to open that, view it, and decide if you want to save that number or call or text that number, and then vice versa, a way to forward a contact to someone. Um,
Nice.
so I know that
That
was
is good.
really high on the survey, right under emojis. So eager to get that. We've already started working on the ability to search for older threads. So when you
Mm,
search a contact that's maybe like 10 or 20 pages down your recents, instead of just showing you their info and call and text, it will actually open up that thread. Uh, there's also going to be a function that we're adding for searching for group threads, which will be really nice. As I mentioned, this GPS work will be coming. And then we're going to do a couple more changes to the compose message screen to try to get an extra line of text in there and a little bit better truncation
okay.
performance,
Good.
how it decides how many characters are on a line. And we think we might be able to do that. Google Calendar support for external calendars is
Nice.
our work is pretty much wrapped up. We have to get approved by Google to be able to take in more information from those users. So we're going through that process with them now. Um, it's been a little bit slow, but that's on the near term horizon as well.
Good. All right. So those are top level, and you kind of touch on those things. One last one. I think this is very very good. What is the most challenging part right now for the company, if there are any challenging aspects?
I mean, there's always so many challenges, I guess.
Okay. You can
On
pick
one
one, a
hand,
couple.
we're still, keeping the team and really tight and sustainable. So like our software is only as quick as how many members we have on board. So that's kind of always one challenge and trying to quickly get out software, but also make sure it's really well tested. Um, we've been, you know, the Light Phone 2 has been in the market for so many years. Some parts are starting to reach their end of life. So,
Mm,
forecasting how many phones we want to make with this and, considering alternatives so that the Light Phone 2 can continue to be made beyond some of those parts going end of life. And then, we've been thinking a lot about, a, an alternative model of the Light Phone and doing a lot of explorations there. I wouldn't call it a direct replacement of the Light Phone 2 as it currently stands. It's sort of a different phone, kind of targeting a slightly different user, but that's been pretty exciting to research that and to start to explore and test different screens and sizes and, just see across the board what technologies out there and what kind of improvements from whether it's 5G, USB-C, and just, as much as possible trying to future proof uh,
mm.
our phones because we want any phone to come out to have the potential of 4 years of life without any planned obsolescence, at least.
Yeah, and so far 4 years it has been, and you guys have done well. I mean, uh, as I always said, like I plan to keep this phone as long as it's feasible, and honestly, again, it has just gotten better over time. Let's start with some ideas from the phone. So, like phone itself, the app phone. So, Wi-Fi calling has been hit or miss for a lot of users. One of our users asks, um, many of us have reached a dead end trying to get Wi-Fi calling to work. Is there any hope? Are we out of luck? What can we do? Or are there any updates coming in that direction?
Unfortunately, I'm not sure there's a ton that can be done. Seems to be such a mixed bag of results across like all phones. As I've like done a lot of research with the developers, we see similar things on iPhones and Android where like uh, one partner Wi-Fi calling works perfect, and the other partner with a different model iPhone can't get it to work. Same carrier, same house. So we're relying really heavily on Android's Wi-Fi calling for that feature. We didn't actually like build it ourselves from scratch, so it's a pretty universal Wi-Fi calling, and unfortunately, we've seen different results on different carriers,
Fair enough.
and it's been really hard to troubleshoot with anyone that has had issues, um,
So, yeah,
unfortunately.
that's
Uh,
understandable.
so, like, we're definitely still always thinking of ways that can be improved, but at this point, we have sort of felt like we're at a little bit of a standstill with the Wi-Fi calling in terms of those few users that are still having issues getting to work at all. Um, and it's not very clear on the carrier sides what can be done.
Yeah,
We tend to get
yeah,
a lot of mixed information.
makes sense. Talking about the phone still, I know Canada is coming up, but some other users are also asked for Germany or other compatibility regions. Do you have any updates when it comes to a larger network in the different countries that are still, supported slash unsupported?
Yeah, I mean, we're still really conservative as to what we claim to be compatible. We actually do have a pretty good amount of users in Germany currently, but unfortunately, we haven't had much luck with the local carriers in trying to get an actual certification so that we can guarantee it will work 100% money back if it doesn't with those carriers. So Germany has kind of unfortunately been in this like at your own risk state, and we're not
Yeah,
too sure what can be done there in any immediate time frame. The same kind of goes for Mexico as a region. But Canada, I think I talked about it a little bit last time. We're pretty deep with a collaboration with TELUS right now on getting an official certification. It's kind of in the last stages of that now, but I don't even want to start to project the timeline because it's been moving very slowly. And with that, we will actually have our own light SIM plans for Canada that are tailored through TELUS for the light phone. And I think they're going to be
Okay.
pretty comparable to the plans we offer in the US.
Awesome. Awesome. That's good to hear. Well, at least
And
Canadians
I guess
can
for a
can
high
rely on
level
that.
timeline, we're aiming for end of summer or fall, but it does seem like it's still at least a couple of months away, unfortunately. End of summer
Yeah.
might be a little bit tight, uh, only because they're moving so incredibly slow.
Makes sense. Makes sense. All right. So let's see. One more question from that. Again, then we're gonna start with the YouTube ones. Um, has there been any ideas on considering a wallet tool for credit cards, tickets? We talked about that in the past. I don't know if you guys have kind of like, is that in the back burner, or where kind of like that idea?
Well, I think from a hardware perspective, it's probably not possible for us to do payments in terms of like
No NFC.
with no NFC chip. It could be possible to partner with a platform like Venmo, perhaps, for sending money to and from peers. Um,
Hmm.
it's not something that's really been explored too deeply. We've thought a little bit about a kind of more like QR code viewer on the light phone.
Right.
Um, it was voted pretty low on our last survey, so it hasn't been a priority. I would say one thing I haven't fully figured out is how a user would like upload and crop the QR code for the phone.
Mm.
Like I think we'd have to have some tools on the dashboard because if you got like a ticket from like Ticketmaster, sometimes it's a whole 8.5 by 11 piece of paper with a little QR code. And if you were to put that on the phone, it might be too small to scan. So how
Right.
could you zoom in on the dashboard so that just the QR code is there? And would
Makes
that
sense.
be straightforward enough for all of our users to understand? Um,
Makes sense. Makes sense. No, that's understandable.
it hasn't been an immediate priority.
That's fine. That's understandable.
Um,
Okay, let's start with some of these. You'll be able to see them. Um,
oh, I can see
from
the chat.
Yeah,
Let
from
me
the
see.
YouTube channel.
Oh, nice. I've
Right.
been missing all these.
uh,
Well, I'm not good at
okay.
multitasking anyway.
Will there be any oh, let me take that out. Give me a second. How can I delete it? Can I delete it? Okay, I'll just put it there. Boom. So, will there be any OS languages added in the future? That's Kenneth's day.
Yeah, actually, that's I should have mentioned that on our kind of near term. That is something we're planning to support at least Spanish and French, which were voted really high on our last survey. It's seems like it's a requirement to do business in Canada that we would support French.
Okay.
And then I think if we're going to have a custom OS, we'd like to support Spanish because that was definitely the most requested alternative language.
If you need any help,
And it
let me
might be
know to
easy to
translate
support more
strings.
than those two. And we at a high level did a technical uh, dive at what that might take, and it's not as complicated as we thought.
Understood.
So that should be something that comes later this year for sure.
Let me know if you need translators. I can help with the
Yeah,
Spanish
it
one.
definitely would be nice. Like what I was imagining is maybe like putting every single word in the OS on a Google
Yep.
sheet and how we're planning to translate it and getting feedback from people before actually coding it.
That would be great. That would be great. Next question from Brian. He says, hosting conference call functionality on the radar to add.
Uh, it isn't, but definitely open ears. I mean, I think anything that falls in the vein of foam function, we're really excited. I know one that I forgot to mention was we are hoping to add Bluetooth controls to the call connected screen.
Oh, nice.
And I can
Yes.
imagine something like this being fairly straightforward as well.
Perfect. Perfect.
And in that same vein, right now, if you get an incoming call, like a call waiting, there's only the option to accept the new call or the other one. We could at the same time allow users to create a conference that way, join the merge the calls.
Hey, a call or calendar. There
It was a spam call, it looks like.
it is. All right. We have Luke. Joe, how do you draw the line between the features the light phone should have compared to Android and features that the light phone shouldn't?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we love reiterating on this one because we think it's so important. And uh, for us, it really comes down to like, if I were to use one word, intentionality. Maybe a second word would be utility, but really that means more tangibly like no social media, no news, kind of like clickbaiting news. There's no infinite internet browser or anything that's kind of advertising driven. And so, really, what we don't want is these kinds of things that a user finds himself wanting to check and recheck. Uh, we want everything that you do on the light phone to be really based in intentionality. Like, I want to play this song or set this timer or text this person. And so often on the smartphone, you might go open the phone thinking you're going to set a timer, and then 30 minutes later, you're still on Instagram. Like, how the hell did that happen? So,
Yep. Yeah.
we really, we don't want to add even an email browser for that kind of reason, because it's something that you'll find yourself checking and checking. And so often email not only has a ton of ads and spam, which is, kind of antithetical to light. It also probably brings a lot of anxiety, work related things, and it'd just be such a subpar experience. So certain things we might be like totally aligned, like an e-reader, doesn't seem off brand, but we've just felt like it's just too small of a device to do that well. So that's kind of, how we feel. And like, we can reconsider that. But just even using the notes tool and uploading really long text, I found it kind of difficult to read through on this small of a device.
More high level question here. Have you guys ever hired any software interns?
We haven't. I think there's kind of a really big learning curve for our developers. When we do hire a new developer, we tend to bring them on to the kind of APIs and backends, but there's so many different pieces of software we use between the dashboard and the Light OS and everything in between to support the site and the admin. I think we've kind of always felt like a little bit weird about internships, especially like unpaid ones in general. We never
Right.
wanted to, not pay people, but also there's kind of such a learning curve for someone to get to a point that they'd actually be adding a ton of value, that it seems almost like more of a distraction than just having our developers go full speed.
Yep.
Um,
Perfect.
but I mean, we could definitely reconsider that
Yeah.
for sure.
Question that always comes, and I'll do both right here so you guys can you can address it, is any updates on Spotify and Signal, as those usually come together. There's another user that also replied there, but I mean, maybe you have had other discussions or things like that.
Yeah, Signal, there hasn't been much tangible progress at this moment. I think it still comes down to a resource point of view, where to support like a really official Signal client that would work across their other apps on your laptop and tablet. And I think that's really where it'd be valuable. Uh, they've kind of estimated we need like 4 times as many developers as we currently have just on such a feature ongoing to make sure it's up to the latest encryption. Uh, so it just kind of seems a little bit infeasible. And Spotify, we've continued to reach out to people there. We actually had a designer internally at Spotify, a light phone user, shouts out, that was really interested in trying to get some traction within Spotify. And
Okay.
we got a little bit more tangible numbers of just like how many users they tend to want to support a custom client. So it seems like to get like a really official Spotify client, we're like in a different league of users. They'd want much more like 1 million users. Um,
Well,
but that being said, a few users have reached out, and I've been chatting with them on some possible middle ground ways that we might be able to make a Spotify client work
nice.
in some limited capacity on the device. So it's like we're exploring all the options, from working with Spotify directly to using the APIs that are currently existing, and the fact that we have an Android phone, to see if maybe there's a middle ground way that we can make something work in the that would be like legal and work with your Spotify account. It does seem like any Spotify integration we might do would require a premium membership, but I think that was kind of a given as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that was a given, even from the beginning. Cool. Awesome. Let's continue with some of these YouTube questions. We still have about 10 minutes, till we get to the hour time. So, you let me know. when you have to get
I'm
going.
good for now.
Yeah.
Haven't.
So any chance of
Hope I'm not
two-factor?
talking too much.
Yeah, any chances a two-factor app like Google Authenticator doesn't have to be Google Authenticator, but 2FA apps since they're becoming less
I would
SMS
say we're
based.
definitely still really interested. We haven't had a clear understanding of which one would specifically be the most useful to support on the device. Um, but I think that feels, not like a distraction or something. It would definitely be a utility-based device. Sorry, tool. Um,
Gotcha.
but it's not on our immediate horizon at the moment.
Gotcha. And of course, as a user, the best way to communicate with you would be to send feedback, right, and to also complete the annual survey that you have essentially every year. So just
Yeah, I
putting that
mean,
out
we
there.
definitely the survey is super great because it's so able to quantify things.
Hmm.
But obviously, every day, whether it's in our inbox, users giving us feedback, or through Discord, Reddit, and some of these other channels, we're definitely taking note of everything. Even if it's maybe something we never go forward with, we definitely make it a note of it. And as we hear more requests, we'll kind of tally and try our best to understand like what is it that's either most frustrating for users or would be most exciting for users.
Yeah.
Obviously, within the ethos of what we feel a light phone should or shouldn't do.
Yeah. Next question from Brian again. Would you please consider adding charging limit to avoid constant 100% charging and protect our batteries?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something we can consider. Realistically, it hasn't been a big priority, and I think we'd technically need to do some diving to see how we could do so. It would probably have to exist pretty deep on a firmware level versus from the Light OS itself. Um, and so we just haven't committed to doing that. I think we prioritize some of these GPS and other Bluetooth issues when it comes to firmware things. And then another one, aside from the time zone function that I mentioned previously, that's almost ready, is APN settings. We want to try to surface a little bit more of the carrier side
Carrier
settings
side.
because,
Yeah.
especially internationally, we think that might help with some compatibility issues that
Yeah.
we've seen in the past.
Yeah. Um, I think Brian also has a suggestion that you should go on the Joe Rogan podcast. So just as an FYI, for the future, they should be reaching out to Joe Rogan. Everybody should reach out to Joe Rogan so we can have both Joes in a nice light podcast. Okay,
We did just recently do. Actually, I don't know if I'm allowed to say it, but there's a pretty cool podcast coming out with Kai and I soon.
nice,
Um, More of a like maker's story,
nice.
but I'll keep my mouth shut for now. I don't know if you're
Is
supposed to
it?
say anything.
It would be like it would be. I mean, if it's I mean, there's a lot of them, but I love how I built this, and that's such a great podcast that kind of like talks about
No comment.
maker. Yeah. Okay, so look at your feed, people. It'll be interesting to see what happens. Okay, so is there any possibility of a beeper integration? This kind of goes with, I guess, Signal, since it's kind of like the same, right? It will take them
Yeah,
to
well,
work it out.
the thing about Beeper is that
Eric
it's a
has a
much
light phone.
smaller team. Eric is a good friend of ours, especially Kaiway, and so he's been experimenting with getting Beeper to work on the phone. And one of our
Nice.
developers has been following the Beeper project for a while, so I think it's like something he's really passionate about as well. So there's definitely the possibility of a Beeper in the future.
I mean, if you have beeper, you've solved everything else because you have well, WhatsApp, Signal, iMessage. Literally, the light phone would be like unlocked for so many audiences. I have beeper and I love beeper because I can take my
Yeah, I
laptop.
haven't personally used it on like my other devices too much, but I'm kind of old school. I kind of stick mostly to SMS or email.
Gotcha.
But I know obviously like getting some of those messages across other platforms is huge for users, especially with like international families and whatnot. So
Yes.
that's definitely something we're interested in. There's
Awesome.
no like timeline, but it does seem like a much easier lift than Signal
Yes.
would.
Perfect. Perfect. Apropos spam calls, is there any feasible approach to identify and or block them?
Uh, there's nothing that we can suggest, really, unfortunately, for end users at the moment, other than maybe adding yourself to the do not call list, which hasn't seemed to make a big difference. We've
Okay.
definitely noticed, just because I have so many phones here with different carriers, that like some carriers tend to be better than others at blocking spam uh, before it gets to your device. And we definitely would love to explore if there's any like potential ways to better identify them and have some sort of maybe spam filter. But I would say some like other features that are in the pipeline or that we've been considering are like whitelisting. So you could just literally not take any calls from unknown numbers and they would just be sent to voicemail or something of the likes. Uh, or we had, some other ideas that we haven't technically thought through. So I'm just kind of riffing out loud here of like, maybe if you call and you're not in the contacts, there's like press 7 to get through to Joe or some way to like
Mm,
if so that if it is a real caller, they can press a number to continue the call uh, and kind of filter some in a more like captcha way. Um,
yeah,
but
yeah.
like I said, this is
I've seen
just
some of
I was
those.
trying to think of like how we could possibly do it. Like I'm not exactly sure how the iPhone has like we think this might be spam. If it's because they're like collecting data from all the phones and they know that this number is spamming a lot of people,
Hmm.
or if it's coming from the carrier. There's not a lot of like public info that I've been able to find. But just to kind of like holistically speak about it, spam calls are inherently like not light, and we would love to do something about it.
Yeah,
I don't want to front like we have a immediate plan of action, but it's something like ongoing. We'd love to constantly improve because
yeah,
the whole point of the light phone is to not be bothered by spam,
yeah.
infinite feeds, or any of these other kind of annoyances of modern tech.
Perfect. One more question from Discord that I think I forgot was, and of course there's other ones as well, but like, does have you guys thought about improving the underlying version of Android from 8.1 to something more recent? Security, things like that. Of course, the iPhone doesn't have a browser or any exploits like that, but is there any plans to update that version?
Uh, I wouldn't say immediate plans. We've done some testing and we haven't found a whole lot of convincing reasons to try to make that migration for the current Light Phone 2. But I definitely think as we consider like alternative models, that's definitely something that's been a part of our conversation. And
Gotcha.
we're kind of just balancing like, is it something that might be worth also updating the Light Phone 2 to? Um, but as you kind of mentioned, we're not using a ton of things, so it doesn't feel terribly pressing. But I like certain things like Wi-Fi calling. We want to know if like we were to upgrade to a newer version of Android, if that might help Wi-Fi calling. If it's made big improvements since the previous one, but it hasn't been very obvious in our immediate testing that there would be any real end user gain at this point for what could be a potentially difficult migration.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Cool. Next one is, will you be able to buy the new t-shirts? Do not buy the light phone t-shirts from the Alliance of Big Tech to the new web shop.
So these T-shirts that we made, wrong way. We actually sent them out to all of our earliest light advocates. The advocate program, just to remind anyone that's not aware, is the kind of basically just a simple referral program. Any user can sign up in the dashboard. Dashboard account referrals is how you sign up, and we give a commission for any phone sale, whether that's friends and family, or you meet someone at the bar and tell them about the light phone. You can share your link with them, and make a small commission. And part of that's our goal to not do paid advertising through these very channels that we kind of criticize so heavily of you know Meta or Google and the likes, and also because we've heard so much about. I saw my friend with the light phone and I decided to get one. We just thought it'd be really cool to kind of have a more tangible thank you in those instances. So these shirts we're not necessarily planning to sell on the web store, but we do have a variety of other shirts and products we're going to be printing over the summer for the
Nice.
light brand that we're going to start selling. And maybe we will eventually put this one out, but we kind of like that it was exclusive for those advocates.
Okay.
We do
Cool.
have a couple t-shirts left. Um, if someone really wants one, they can shoot us an email. We might be able to make it work. Shipping international gets a little difficult, gets
Yeah.
really expensive, but it was really fun. It's funny, like wearing this shirt out, it definitely gets much more questions than I anticipated of people saying, "What's a light phone?"
Yeah.
So it seems to be working.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. That's good. Okay, so one more thing I usually just put out on Discord is, can you show the emoji picker? So when you pick an emoji, what's available? Is it everything available, or
Oh,
like
to pull up, there's only a list of, I'm forgetting the exact number, probably like 3 by 6, maybe 18 or so emojis.
okay,
Uh, I'll see if I that's
gotcha.
visible. So right now, and like obviously we can, this is subject to change, but we tried to do a balance of like what we thought would be the most common kind of reactions of emojis. Obviously, there's like a million emojis nowadays, and they can all be used, but like ones that felt like a quick reaction.
Yes,
Uh, the
perfect.
hearts are red. Obviously we can't really show color, so it felt too hard to show like 10 different hearts. So
Yes,
this is
makes sense.
currently the emojis, and uh, we're definitely open to feedback. In future, we can consider maybe making the list longer if we want more emojis, but it's been kind of a nice limitation that you're not like overthinking which emoji, but it is nice to, if someone said something, you just send a thumbs up, got you, and not have to. I personally didn't think I would use the emojis very much. It was voted the highest feature request on our last survey, and I am proven that it's very useful in my life.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Yeah, I mean, I'm really excited when I saw it on mine, because you texted me and I was like, oh, this is a native emoji. This is how it looks. Like, I render pretty nicely. One more question from the chat. We have Brian again. If there's a missed call, uh, we always see it as a notification, no matter if you missed the call on the person's thread. Is this bug fixed on the new update?
I don't know if I've ever heard about that bug. If I'm understanding correctly, they're asking like the asterisk won't go away even if you view the thread.
That seems like it. So maybe,
Um,
yeah.
it's not something on our radar. So
Okay.
in the sense that I don't think I've ever seen or heard that bug. It might be in our bug tracking somewhere, but a lot of times when we get bugs reported, we try our best to replicate it. And there is a folder of bugs that we haven't been able to replicate, and we'll, every so often go through them and really try our best. But uh,
Perfect.
unless we are able to see it, it's been really hard. I would say if you're in a state like that, reboot the Light OS, which you can do from the settings, account and info, reboot Light OS, should hopefully resolve anything like that. This draft text bug that I mentioned earlier that's kind of been delaying our release, like the reboot always does fix it, but we just, don't want to ship anything with a known bug on it as much as we can.
Okay, sounds good. All right, that's awesome. Okay, so one more thing. I think this is kind of like an in passing mention at around 1 hour and 3 minutes. Is so I'm taking my light phone to Europe, guys, and if you're in Europe, I'm going to be putting a giveaway for that light phone. I'll be testing all throughout my days there, but whenever I leave back to the United States, I'll leave it out there. So I'll put it in the subreddit for international users. But if you're an international user, stay tuned for that. I'll probably be posting it later today, um, because I need to. I mean, I'll be there for 2 weeks, and then I'll be like leaving that light phone there, because I mean, I don't need it here. So that's another light phone that goes to somebody. Um, Okay, cool. I don't think we have any more questions in this area. We did have one personal question, and it was, "Do where is it? Where is it? Darn it! I missed the thread again. Give me 1 second. Boom, right here. The question was for you, Joe. Ta, 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 ta. Where is it? art. It had to do with art. Aha. No, that's not what I'm looking for. It essentially said something along the lines of like, do you feel like, um as as somebody who has used the light phone for a while, like, and managing the company and like doing all of that stuff, do you feel like you still have time for your kind of like art and doing other creative projects?
Oh, yes, definitely. I mean, one of the best things about doing the light phone is that it gives me the creative freedom to work in a bubble, so to speak, and that I don't have to actually try to sell the art to pay my rent each month, which was, my kind of life before the light phone. Um, and I probably spend less hours because I'm not living off of it than I
Mhm.
was before the light phone. But, everyone at Light, we try to practice what we preach. Uh, so making my art is my favorite thing to do without my smartphone. And when I close my laptop and I'm, free, whether that's piano and music or, painting and collage, it's, a huge part of my life and probably always will be. Definitely, like I said, I don't wake up on a Monday morning, get to just paint. I'm diving into light phone. But at night and on weekends, I try to make as much time as possible for my art, my friends, my family, everything
Yeah,
kind of.
yeah. Cool. That's good to hear. Yesterday we went to the zoo. I'm actually writing an article right now on this, but we went to the zoo, and my wife said something to me that kind of like really made me kind of reflect on the journey. And she said, like, you are, like she said, you're a different person when you don't have a smartphone or a smart device around. And like she has noticed that change over time, and it was really powerful to me because it's like, yes, we are different people when we don't have these like digital appendages on us and all, like it's crazy. So I know I have changed, and I'm still furthering disassociating, from all of these, because nowadays it's pretty much necessary for a lot of things, or not necessary, but it's convenient. So
I mean, for
um
some businesses, artists,
yes,
etc., it's definitely
businesses, yeah,
necessary.
yeah, yeah, very
Light
true.
phone, I'm on social media more to be our voice there than I probably would care to be. But it's also
Yeah,
where we have really important conversations with potential users or existing users.
yeah, absolutely. I think that's all the questions pretty much. I mean, there were other a couple ones like very high level ones that I mean like maybe one more that you can dive into, that is kind of like, how do you see the market shifting, like with smartphones versus dumb phones, like what do you see the future looking like in that sense?
I would say one point of optimism that we've kind of seen consistently is since Kai and I met and started this in 2014, year over year, it does seem like the growing awareness amongst the general population of kind of
Mhm.
like the how and why we've got to where we are, why smartphone apps are free, and why they're so addictive. Seems more like public knowledge now than it ever has, and part of that's the variety of articles and books and films that have come out over the years. Things like the screen time feature that Apple and other smartphones rolled out a couple of years ago make much more quantified. So I like one difference I see is like I used to present the light phone a lot, and people would actually say like I hate this thing, and some people loved it. And now you get a lot more. I love it. I wish I could. There's a lot less like I don't get it at all. It's maybe just like oh, I wish I could use it versus like I completely hate it. I don't get it at all. So I think people understand the value at a bigger scale, and I think all of these improvements we're trying to make are just to make the friction of someone taking a lifestyle change, like going light, further. And um, we've seen our sales grow each year. I mean, obviously, we're still a relatively niche company in the scheme of cell phone companies, but we've been able to survive as a really small startup in a landscape that really doesn't support small players.
Yeah,
Samsung, Apple, Google. These are conglomerate companies, the big players, and even on the dumb phone side, like Nokia and stuff, huge
yeah,
phones. So it's inspiring to see other types of phones come out. And I said we're kind of exploring a new model of light phone that I think will make the light phone appealing to a different audience that maybe right now the current light phone isn't suitable for whatever reasons. Without
Yeah.
going into too much detail, and I think that's been just rejuvenating in general for the team to have a kind of new big project starting to get some
And you would say,
momentum on the horizon.
and you would say that, as the landscape is shifting, and like, I mean, I know in the survey you guys talked about the LCD versus e-ink, and like, you guys are still, trying out different devices, but um like uh I guess to reassure, like, is the light phone 2 still like a long-term plan until it's viable for you guys, or like whenever the light phone 3 comes out, or whatever you guys do, with replacement device, maybe LCD or stuff like that, like, how's your integrated future plans essentially?
Yeah, it's hard to talk too much about it just now, but
Fair
I
enough.
would
That's
say
fine.
like we're very committed to wanting to offer a phone like this for as long as we possibly can.
Fair enough.
And if they stop making this e-ink screen, we've already considered alternatives e-ink screens or alternative similar kind of technologies that have come out that aren't exactly e-ink but have some of the same qualities of no backlight and whatnot. So whether we make another one and we keep producing this phone exactly as it is, or this has to get upgraded and there's another model for a slightly different user, a slightly bigger device. I think there really, kind of is people that want a super, super small phone and people that, whether it's for eyesight, practical reasons, battery life, want a bigger device,
Yeah.
the size of their hands and whatnot. So, I think we're exploring all of them, but we have no plans to stop supporting the Light Phone 2 with OS updates. And, the goal in thinking about any alternative model is to use the existing Light OS as much as possible. So, it might take 12 or 18 months before we see another Light Phone model out in the world. The Light OS will hopefully come even further in progress,
Yeah.
and it's only going to make that device much more useful out the gate. Um,
Absolutely.
there
Absolutely.
may be a time eventually where the Light Phone 2 just no longer is able to be produced in this kind of small e-ink way,
Hmm.
but we'd love to, create a similar device and, keep supporting this one as long as possible. We've started doing some screen and battery repairs locally in Brooklyn. Um, it is quite a time-consuming process, so it's
Right.
been hard for us to scale that. If you were to send us a broken phone with a broken screen, to actually like take off the screen and replace it is for one person working on it is quite time consuming,
Hmm.
uh, and to have someone constantly available for that. So we're still figuring out how we might be able to do that, but we're slowly going through broken phones we've collected and trying to replace them, both on the screen side and on the battery side, which is exciting.
Good. Good. Yeah. Repairability, I know, is one of your goals. And I mean, you have talked about it in the
Especially
past.
thinking about new models, that's something that we're really excited about, and we think we have some cool, unique ideas there.
Good. Yeah. I mean, I think Light OS is going to continue getting better, and I feel like that as a foundation will just make whatever hardware adaptation you make, just like a better, a better option for end users, which I think is what a lot of people. I think a lot of people were saying, like, even if you cannot keep the e-ink, there's like other new, like the Play Date, I think, has a new, like, kind of like half OLED, half whatever screen. It's like it's no backlight, and I
It's
mean, there's a lot of
probably
other technologies.
memory and pixel is the technology we've
Yeah,
been
something
looking
like
at a
that.
lot.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah, yeah.
as
Awesome.
quick as OLED, but and it does have a backlight, but you could turn it on and off.
Gotcha.
So that's
Gotcha.
been really interesting. We've been doing a lot of testing with that. I
Good.
can't say we're
That's
committed
awesome.
to it in any way. We've been testing new e-ink modules and a variety of other screens,
Yeah,
just to make
yeah.
sure we're finding the
Eh,
screen that makes the most sense for a light phone.
Yeah, that's awesome. Chris came to a live screen coming in late, but he's talked about no Wi-Fi phone calls, but Wi-Fi texting. Have you had any uh, users say that it works, or coming, or things like that?
Uh, I'm not exactly sure entirely off the
Okay,
top.
fair enough.
I know like there's like texting over like platforms, but we've seen a lot less about like an Android kind of supported carrier Wi-Fi texting. I'm
Okay,
not so sure that's exists. I mean, if anyone has info to share about that, we're definitely open ears.
Yeah, I think sometimes the RCS protocol, like like the new Google protocol that is like it's like iMessage but for Android essentially. So I think RCS supports that that you can still send SMS via Wi-Fi, but I don't know if you had to have a certain you know idea and stuff like that. Um, I think Peter, yeah, I think I saw this one, but I think it was
Uh,
answered
that
kind of like
I
already.
mentioned the Google external calendars. We're also looking to explore
Yes.
that. I don't have 100% technical yes that I can say that it's possible, but it should be possible, and we hope to support it.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. We'll
And there's a
wait on
couple of
that.
other little calendar things we've heard from people about, like wanting to see any date that has an event bolded. We had initially built that
Yeah,
feature, and
I
I
heard
thought
that a
it
lot.
was uh, not that clear because
Okay.
it was hard to tell in e-ink what was bold or not. But it's if it helps at all, I mean, we can definitely consider that. So there's definitely some minor upgrades like that, especially around like getting more podcasts to work, getting more calendars to sync. These tools that we already have. How do we just make them more functional?
Yeah.
And then again, like the directions tool, I said we're improving the GPS a lot, but we've also like did a little bit of testing to make sure we could support phone numbers in the future, so you could look up a phone number for a place as well.
Cool.
Um,
Oh, on the directions tool.
mhm. So that
Yes.
does seem possible with our current here setup. Obviously, we need to figure out the UX, but I mentioned like sharing contacts is going to be a thing. We also want to make like phone numbers potentially clickable in
Nice.
threads as well as the directions tool. So some of these things cross over. Audio
Yeah.
messages is another one that's
Oh,
quite high
oh, that sounds
on the
nice.
survey. So like we're going to start exploring that. We don't have the UX 100% fleshed out for how you would go from like a voice to text or an audio text and how you would pick which one.
Yeah.
But because we made the notes tool with voice memo, that should be totally possible in due
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. Cool. That's awesome, Joe. Well, guys, we're about 1 hour and 16 minutes in our live stream. We've gone through a lot of stuff and a lot of high level, mid level, very detailed, granular
Yeah.
stuff. We'll be waiting for the next update. Stay tuned to the channel. I'll be showcasing how it looks and like kind of like the big changes and how to get them back. Um, if you because you have the options, right? You can put the send button on the bottom. You mentioned that, like it's kind of like user preferred. And yeah,
It's, I
again, a lot.
have really been enjoying the send button on the top though.
I'm pretty sure
Once
I
I
will
got
too.
used to it, but at first it was like, what the heck? Like it really felt so weird. And I could
I
see a
bet.
lot of users really wanting to revert that. But after a few days, I was like, oh, I love having it here.
Yeah.
Um, so I hope
I
users
can
feel
see
the
the
same way.
quality of life improvement already because like sometimes you're composing a message and boom, like you hit something like you're trying to hit the backspace and then you send the message, right? So like having at the top distance from everything, I think is a very good idea. But I know some people are like, I'm fine with it, I already adjusted, and they're not gonna have an issue. But I'm pretty sure like a lot of people are gonna be like, oh yes, at the top it makes more sense. And how do we ever live without it, right? Like I mean, that's the thing of new features sometimes. So
Hope
cool.
so.
Cool. Well, thank you, Joe. Thank you. Appreciate everybody in the
My
community.
pleasure. Can't
As
wait to get
always,
this OS update out.
yeah,
Hopefully, middle of next week is our goal, but as soon as possible.
as soon as possible. We'll leave it at that, and look up for a cool podcast. Maybe it is. Wait, don't. I mean, I'm sorry. How I built this? Maybe. Hopefully, I would love to hear those voices right there, but maybe not. Maybe it's another one. There's a lot of like maker podcasts. I'm really excited about listening to that and like the story behind it. It's been really cool that to follow over the past 4 years, and we always appreciate your time. So, thanks a lot, Joe. Thanks a lot, everyone. We will see you guys in the next time. So yeah.
Take care.